Episode 78 of the Pilot podcast takes off now. AV Nation, today's episode is brought to you by the Mentor Aviation app. Mentor Aviation is a social media platform where aviation enthusiasts can get into contact with professional pilots in a positive and constructive manner. One of my favorite ways to use the Mentor Aviation app is the breaking news. It sends you news on aviation, whether it's plane incidences or airline news. Thomas Cook went out of business, and the first time I found out, but that was through Mentor Aviation. So go ahead and check out Mentor Aviation app on Google Play Store and Apple App Store today. It's free to download.
Hi, everyone. My name is Andrew Burnham. I'm a ramp controller at Washington Dulles International Airport.
What is going on, AV Nation, and welcome back to the Pilot podcast. My name is Justin Seams, and I'm your host. Thank you guys for bearing with me. This episode's coming out a little bit later than normal. I just got back yesterday from an 8-day tour, and I am exhausted. 8 days of flying can really kind of drag on you and take a lot out of you. So I am putting in the work now. I'm getting this episode out. So I thank you for bearing with me and being patient. I also want to say thank you for listening to the podcast and sharing it with your friends. Every single week, we continue to get more and more listeners and downloads and subscribers on Instagram or the podcast or whatever it is. So I just want to say thank you. I'm currently working on some new designs for t-shirts and some swag and some cool hats. So if you're interested in that, let me know. It's going to be some pretty cool stuff and stuff I'm really proud about. So I'm looking forward to that. But today is about Andrew Burnham. Andrew is a Washington Dulles ramp controller. He has been an aircraft dispatcher for Delta private jets. He also has a private pilot license. So he's kind of done a lot in aviation, has a lot of good advice for people coming into this career to look at it on the other side of things, how you can go into ATC, how you can be a ramp control, and the difference between the two. One thing that I didn't know is that ramp control is completely separate from FAA control. So it's really interesting to talk about and learn more about aviation in the industry. If you like today's episode, you can leave us a review on iTunes. Check out our website, www.pilotthepilothq.com, where you can find all the links to find out more information about Pilot the Pilot. Our Instagram's on there, Facebook's on there, Twitter, and you can also check out our Patreon page. AV Nation, I don't want to keep it any longer. Thank you for listening. Without any further ado, here's Andrew Burnham. Andrew, what's going on, man? Welcome to the Pilot podcast.
Justin, how's it going, man? Really appreciate you having me on here.
Yeah, no problem. It's going really well. Getting ready to go back to work. So you're the last interview of my off cycle. So I got to end it with a bang.
Oh, well, hopefully I can be up to the test for it.
No pressure, right?
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. So first question I ask everyone is the same question. It is, why aviation? What was your original inspiration to get into this industry?
So my original inspiration to get into this industry, I was lucky I had some friends that were into flight simulator back in early 2000s. That kind of got me hooked off. And then my neighbor is a FedEx pilot. He used to be an FO on an Airbus A300, and now he's, I believe, a captain on a 757. And he kind of piqued my interest. He says, you can go up to the airport and take a discovery flight. And I had no idea that was something that you could do. I thought, you had to fully commit to flying before, you could, even do something like that. He's like, oh yeah, it's like $100. You can just go up to the airport and take like a little intro flight. And ever since that, I've just been hooked, man.
So how old were you when you did the intro flight?
So I was 14.
Okay.
So when I started that, and it was pretty crazy. The Goodyear blimp, before they got their Zeppelins, was out and about. So I got to see that while I was flying around my house. Yeah. So it was pretty cool. That was before, the nice iPhones, you taking a picture on your old school cell phone.
Oh my gosh. Flip phones.
Yeah, exactly. So
I found my old flip phone, and I don't even remember how it was like right when texting was starting to kick off, and like texting was a hot mess with the T9. You had to click so many letters,
man.
And
dude,
it just
T9 hitting the numbers like 3 or 4 times to get like to a certain letter. Yeah, that's exactly when it started.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's pretty wild. And then so back to your story. Enough about technology.
Yeah.
So you took that first flight. What was that first flight like? You said you took that flight when you're 14.
Yeah, it was incredible. And like when I told the flight instructor, this was before flight sim was kind of like regarded as like a good thing in the industry. Like, there were simulators back then, but like people didn't really they kind of looked at flight sim as like, oh, this guy, great. And my instructor at the time there that did the intro flight, he was like, well, you should already, know most of the basics. So I'll tell you what, I'll work the pedals and you work the yoke.
Oh,
and
cool.
he's like, as soon as we hit 60 knots, just pull back. And, just the euphoria of that first flight in a small airplane, it's just unremarkable.
Yeah, I've mentioned before in quite a bit of podcasts that if you think you want to be a pilot or if you think you want to get into this track, it's very important to do an intro flight. Now, depending on where you live, there could be a lot of options. And we talked a little bit, you're in Northeast Ohio, so there are some decent airports up there, decent amount of airports. So you probably had a couple options to choose from. What were you looking in when you were doing an intro flight? Did you just try to find the cheapest flight possible? Did you do your Google research? Did you look pretty hard and depth into it? Or did you just find an airport, go there and go do the intro flight?
At the time, I really didn't do a whole lot of research. I was just, I was pretty young and just kind of super excited. And my neighbor just, told me, well, there's the Kent State Airport over in Stowe, Ohio. Mm-hmm. And, it was such a short drive. And it looked like a pretty decent FBO and small little mom and pop kind of flight operation. They really only had like 2 airplanes.
Oh, wow.
So it wasn't really a big flight operation because the big flight operation was the university. So, I just went and did that and it worked out great. And the attention to detail after the fact, like when I went there and did the whole intro flight, they gave me like a small logbook.
Oh,
and
cool.
They had obviously like a little 30-minute video on like some basics and just the attention to detail for that first flight and kind of all the little odds and ends. That's what really made it special.
That's cool. Yeah. It's so they give you this free logbook and this video in hopes that they'll hook you on for $10,000 to get your private pilot license, right?
Exactly. So obviously I didn't go with them, but that's
What was the next step when you were doing your training? So obviously you take this intro flight, you're 14. There's really not much you can do until you're 16, 17. So kind of what did you do in the meantime? Did you go there and do some flights still, or did you put it off, just fly simulator flights and then go back when you're of age, or did you do some training before?
So that just kind of kicked off and basically I was bit by the bug, as they say. But at that time, obviously money was pretty tight. I'm a young guy, I'm barely of working age at 14.
Right.
So, and my parents, I'm one of 4 boys in the family. So, it's not an easy thing to, just go out and drop some money down and get your pilot certificate. No. So flash forward to the summer before my freshman year at Kent State University. I was lucky enough to have some family members make a pretty sizable contribution. And I basically signed up a semester early into college and flew my butt off about 6 days a week through the summer of 2012 to get my pilot certificate.
Yeah.
So pretty much 6 days a week. I think, there were a couple presidential tours. So that obviously hampered down, for a few days to a week, with the TFR and stuff like that in Akron and Cleveland. Kent's kind of right in between. So we kind of got hosed by the presidential TFR. But it was fantastic. Started in June of 2012 and I finished November 12th, I believe.
Nice.
The day. Yeah,
so you're flying a lot. You said 6 days a week if you could. Did you ever have to face any kind of burnout mentality, or did you ever have to take some time off to kind of take a break at all, or were you just powering through to get it done?
It's crazy. I really didn't. I was just so excited and passionate about aviation. I kept going. Yeah. I mean, there were days where I was tired, but I don't know. I just absorbed it like a sponge, and I just wanted to constantly keep pushing and pushing and pushing. So, and I hustled a lot like that in college in general. So, it's just, I don't know. Never really had that kind of burnout.
That's good.
So
what was next for you after your private pilot training?
So after my private pilot training, well, we'll step back slightly for a minute. So obviously flying, I was very interested in it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to potentially be a pilot like my neighbor for FedEx. After I got into college and was, touring colleges and stuff like that, looking at kind of what the pricing was like, that's when I started shifting gears.
Yeah.
You go to colleges and they're saying, oh yeah, tuition is, $40,000 out of state. And oh, by the way, your pilot training is not included. And from private to commercial plus CFI is $75,000 out of pocket. Yeah. And it's just like, oh my gosh.
You're like, excuse me, how much?
Exactly. So, one other option that my parents always kind of wanted me to go into, was like radio or be like a news anchor or a weather guy. One, because of my voice, and two, they thought, that I had kind of the personality and the mentality that I could do something like that. Well, best of both worlds, air traffic control.
Heyo.
So I saw Kent State's program. They have one of the largest air traffic control simulators out of any university in the country.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's right down the road from where I lived. So it was a win-win. And I was still able to get my pilot certificate on the side. So I could still have the luxury of flying on the side if I wanted to, just for my own personal use.
Mm-hmm.
But then I also have a job that can pay for it. That was the most important thing.
For sure.
Being able to pay for something that I really love and enjoy.
How many certificates do you have? Did you stop at your private, or did you go get your instrument in your commercial?
So I don't have my instrument.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I do have is my aircraft dispatcher certificate.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so that was arguably one of the hardest certificates I've ever achieved. I did that junior year of college, and the written exam is very similar to the ATP written.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of our textbooks were actually the ATP prep book on top of commercial, instrument, etc. So it's almost like all of the written ratings mashed into one test. Shepherd Airman saved my life. I know several people on the podcast have mentioned it, but yes. Shepherd Airman, the data bank for that test is 1,100 questions.
Holy smokes.
Exactly. I think the ATP is maybe 1,500 or a slight little bit more than that. But yeah. So there's 1,100 possible questions, and there's only 80 of them on the test. So you're studying Shepherd Air for like 2 months trying to prep for this.
Just memorize.
Yeah. So, but it was fantastic. And that dispatcher's certificate basically led me to my first job out of college.
Cool. So talk a little bit about getting your dispatcher certificate. So obviously it's not something I've really talked about before. What's the process? Like you mentioned, you're going to take a written that's essentially an ATP written. I've heard the actual practical exam you have to do is pretty intense too, with the flights you have to plan and the stuff you have to prove to the examiner and stuff. So just kind of go into detail about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's very intense, and only up until my junior year did I even know something like this existed. I think a lot of people know that there's aircraft dispatchers or people behind the scenes that do flight planning.
Yeah,
but they don't know where to go to figure out how to do that as a career. And not to plug it, but there's a ton of hiring in that specific facet of the industry, and I highly recommend getting that as a backup, whether you're a pilot, whether you're a controller, God forbid you have something happen to your medical.
Yeah.
This is a fantastic backup tool and an extra tool in your tool bag. As for getting into it, I was lucky Kent State University just recently kind of got authority from the local FSDO to have this program.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically like a college course. I did it over the summer. It was like 8 weeks, full blown fire hose effect into your face.
Hang on tight.
Hang on tight. Oh yeah. So there's several schools across the country, schools that do just that. Kind of like there's like contract air traffic control schools. Like that's all they do is you go there and you get your CTO.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with aircraft dispatch. I can't name any off the top of my head. I'd have to look it up, but basically went through that program with the fire hose effect, and you prep for that written exam. After you pass that written exam, you have basically a 5-hour, mine was about 6 hour oral exam. with the examiner. My examiner just so happened to be at the time the director of operations at Delta Private Jets.
No way.
Which is crazy. He soon later became my boss.
I was say it's a chance for you to make a very good impression or a very bad impression.
Exactly. And we had several examiners from other companies like ABX, Southern Air. So these gentlemen that do this, sometimes that's all they do. Sometimes they're already active in the industry. Mm-hmm. Basically, you spend 3 hours planning a flight for a 737, and you have two nice big binders with you. You got a binder that's full of weather, and then you have another binder that's the op specs. And within there's also the GOM, a general operating manual. So you're utilizing both of those, planning an RNAV route. I did Cleveland to Boston. Mm-hmm. I did the winter exercise. So you have to plan the whole thing, and he looks at it almost like he's the FMS. And if there's a mistake, or if it's not like perfectly RNAV, routes, or he'll come back and he'll say the computer rejected your flight plan. Please try again. So it was pretty cool. Then on top of that, so after the flight plan, just drilled on regulations, all the part 135 or part 121 regulations. Mm-hmm. Concerning, if this happens, what do we do, or what's the crew duty limitations for this scenario? Then he starts talking about your flight plan. Hey, you just lost all your anti-icing system. Where are you going to divert to? So it was pretty intense, but it's an incredible tool.
It sounds intense. I feel like now if I was going through that process, I'd be like, all right, so I planned this. Here's for flight. Here's my iPad. This is where we're going. And so any questions? All right, we're done. Thanks.
Yeah.
Have a good day.
To mention, speaking of, for flight and stuff like that, they pretty much give you the low and route chart, and you're using highlighters and pencils and drawing the whole route.
I'd be like, dude, no one does this anymore. Where's my computer software?
Exactly.
That's really funny. Yeah. How long ago did you do this?
So this was 2016.
Okay.
Is when I got this certificate. And only worked for a short time at Delta Private Jets. I had kind of like a mock interview my senior year, and they said, "Oh, well, do you want to interview with someone in air traffic, or do you want to interview with someone as a dispatcher?" And at the time, before they already had it changed. They used to do interviews for ATC in that whole hiring process, the government hiring process. You'd interview with a panel of, people from a facility. Well, now they don't do that anymore. So interviewing with someone with ATC is, in my opinion, was kind of, pointless, because ultimately it's usajobs.gov that is accepting, your application or whatever HR is sifting through it. So, well, lo and behold, my mock interview was with, the director of operations at Delta Private Jets, which I had already spent 6 hours in a room doing an oral exam.
That's funny. You guys knew each other pretty well.
Exactly. So he kind of was like, well, we really don't need to do a mock interview. Let's do a real interview. I need to hire two people. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I mean, mind you, I was dressed up if it was like actually going to be a legit interview. And it was.
That's hilarious.
He was like, when can you come see the operation? And when you get an opportunity like that, you just pursue it. You don't hesitate. You just go full force, just like what I did with my flight training. A door opens, go for it, man. So I managed to work it out. I, drove down, did the interview, did a culture fit interview, and bam, got into the operation at Delta Private Jets, which is pretty big.
Yeah, no, it is. It's definitely a pretty big operation. And it's, so you went down, so you're up in Northeast Ohio, you drove down they're based out of Cincinnati. Am I right?
Yeah. So they're based out of Cincinnati. Ironically, it's Erlanger, Kentucky, because the airport is across the other side. So it's the northern Kentucky, Cincinnati.
Ohio airport. Yeah. Which is just so weird.
Yeah. So huge airport. I've got a friend that works there, and now, you've got Amazon is a huge hub there, and just so many 747-8s and Polar Car. So I worked there for about 6 months before an alumni kind of piqued my interest to my current job, working as a ramp tower controller at Dulles. And I got a message and he's like, dude, you got to take a look at this. It's like ground control on steroids. It's so much fun. And I knew he was wanting to go into the FAA. So he was there at the time. His wife worked at Washington Center, and they both now work there at Washington Center.
Yeah.
So he was kind of waiting for his class date. He needed kind of a fix until then. And that's what this fix was ramp control.
That's one of my questions was, so obviously I didn't know, is ramp center or ramp control different from FAA? So do you go through the same certification, same hiring process to work ramp as you do, say, at Washington Center, or is it a little bit different?
So it's completely different, which is both good and bad.
Yeah.
We'll start with the good. It's completely different in the fact that you do not need a CTO.
Okay.
You do not have to attend the FAA Academy because we are not FAA or federal. And we're not working controlled surfaces. Basically, we're working what's known as the non-movement areas of the air. So pretty much all the in-between spots between the runways where the gate areas and the terminals are, that's pretty much all our pavement.
Okay. So let's say you're working my flight and I'm in ramp and I severely mess up. Can you still get me in trouble with the regulations, or is it kind of just like hey man, don't do that, but next time do this?
I mean, it depends on the severity.
Yeah.
It definitely can be reported. We've had incidents before. Obviously, not going to name anything specific, but we've had stuff happen where we have to notify a chief pilot of an airline because somebody decided that it was not a big deal to just keep going, and it is a big deal.
That's funny. Yeah, no, I would assume it was. I just didn't know that it wasn't part. It's not part of the FAA at all then for what you guys do?
No, our facet of the airport, we are employed by the airport's authority.
Okay. So
we're basically a kind of like a port authority. We're an organization designed to govern the airport.
Okay. So let's go back a little bit before you got this job. You're at Delta Private Jets for 6 months. What you were obviously doing kind of dispatching and that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. So we actually had operational control, which is kind of a big thing with dispatching. And I was working graveyard shift. As the newbie, I was the one working the graveyard shift, and 3 days on, 3 days off, 4 days on, 4 days off, and they were anywhere from 10 to 12-hour shifts. So everything from customs, we would do EAPIS, all that stuff, Canadian APIS. We had flights that would go to, all over the place. Weather tracking, flight planning, fuel planning, all that stuff across an entire fleet. So I was talking to tons and tons of pilots. You got the headset on and everything, and you're getting phone calls left and right. So it was a very dynamic and very fast paced job, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Do you have any epic stories from your time as dispatch? Like you had one plane that was just stuck circling. You had to find an airport for them to land at all, or was it pretty smooth sailing?
No. I do have a pretty good story in mind. I've got several. One's not appropriate, so we won't talk about that.
All right, sounds good.
But this one is appropriate. Yeah. So it's almost the end of my shift. Mind you, I work graveyard, so it's about 5 a.m. I get off in about an hour or two, and I get a phone call, and it almost sounds like somebody pulling the phone out, like their cell phone out in an airliner. Like you can hear the noise in the background, like the wind rushing and stuff like that. And it was the flight attendant on one of our flights. And I'm like, what? We had a Gulfstream that was trying to get into London, into the Luton airport. And the visibility was so bad, they had to divert. So she was calling from the galley phone in the Gulfstream to let me know that the pilots were diverting. Here's the big issue with that. Now we have a customs issue because this flight was from the US nonstop over to London Luton, and now they're diverting to a different London airport. So all of the customs, the APIS and stuff is now for the wrong airport.
Oh no.
Not to mention all the car and driver services, at the other airport. We don't have anything now at this new airport. So I'm hauling, and it's just me there. Customer service is gone. It's 5 a.m. They leave, by midnight. So I'm a one-man band, and I'm making phone calls. I'm calling the new airport. I'm trying to get, basically a replacement to hurry up so that when they land, even though it's a different airport, they have transportation. And luckily it went off without a hitch. Customs over there was super nice. I guess it happens all the time. I mean, London's pretty rainy and foggy.
Yeah,
so
weather's not the best.
So, but the last thing I was thinking of towards the end of the shift was getting a phone call from our cabin attendant in a Gulfstream that's halfway across the pond.
Jeez. The things that you have to do in kind of the private aviation, and I'm sure in commercial aviation, there's a lot of stuff like this too, but it happens more in kind of fractional or just private aviation in general. It's because you never know what's going to happen, and they want to get to this one obscure airport. And then when that plan fails, it's like kind of especially when you're the only one, it's really just very chaotic. And you got to try to figure out how to get the driver. You have to try to figure out how to set up late ops. You got to try to figure out customs, like you said. You got to, maybe they have a lot of freight or a lot of, even on the freight road, you got to find a forklift. Like there's so much that goes on behind the scenes in private aviation, whether it's 135, 91, 91K. It's just like, it's a hot mess. And a lot of times it's a controlled hot mess, but very, very often, and sometimes it is a very much uncontrolled chaos and just crazy. So I don't know if everyone really understands what goes through that process and how kind of complex it is.
Yeah, it's very complex. There's a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes just to finish and kind of make that one flight perfect, let alone making 100 flights perfect, to 1,000 flights perfect, in one day.
Yeah. And what's crazy is that the person that you have in the back, or your customer, your owner, whatever it may be, they expect everything to work seamlessly. They expect to get their limo to drop them off at the plane, you to take off within 10 to 15 minutes, have no delays with ATC, to land at the airport they're requesting, to have the driver there, and to go off to their hotel instantly. No waiting, no whatsoever. So to give them that same experience is very tough in those situations. And listen, a lot of times it does work out, but it's going to be a heart pumping couple hours trying to figure all that out.
Exactly. It only takes one detail and it could throw the whole flight off. It's
absolutely. So what made you want to leave Delta Private Jet? Sounds like you had a pretty good job that you liked. Was it the hours you were working? Was it, because I'm guessing Delta Private Jets, there's probably ways for you to move up inside the system. So what was the reason for leaving to go work ramp at Washington Dulles?
Yeah, so there's definitely a lot of room for growth, and the people there were fantastic. I mean, I still talk to them today, and it's a really, really fun place. I left because dispatching, although it's great, that's not what I went to college for.
Right.
So, the main thing was doing air traffic control. And this was kind of a close second to air traffic control. And now it's kind of my number one.
Yeah.
So, kind of off tangent, obviously I went to school for air traffic control, but why am I pursuing that? Am I trying to get hired by the FAA? Sadly, no.
Okay. Why is that?
A number of different things. I don't know if you kind of kept up a few years ago when the hiring process kind of all got pretty corrupted. Mm-hmm. There were a number of individuals that basically wanted to hire these groups of people to controllers based on diversity and not based on kind of, their assets, their accolades and stuff like that. You had the whole biographical questionnaire, which pretty much flipped the whole process around, and it wasn't really tested before they put it out live. Mm-hmm. And it was just kind of thrown together, in my opinion, haphazardly.
Yeah.
And then to top it off, you really don't get to pick where you go.
No, so you have no choice. You
have no idea, and you don't find out until you finish training at the academy. So you're hustling. You get through the academy, and it's all based on how well you do at the academy. So if you're at the top of the class of 8, then you get the top pick on the list.
But the top pick might not even be a good spot. Like, you don't know what slots will be available too, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So, they could have a class and all the slots are for, and no offense to NorCal, but it could be for NorCal.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh my God, that's my first facility.
And based on where you pick too, doesn't that depend on how much you get paid? Because I'm sure like the busier airspaces aren't they split up in levels? Like you have level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5 pay. And is that based on the facility you're working at? Do you know? Or is that just kind of your age and experience?
Yeah. So it's based on complexity and volume. Mm-hmm. So like, for example, Dulles is a level 9 airport. While Cleveland Center is a level 12 facility. So obviously the en route structure is way more complex from a terminal facility. And to kind of backtrack, on top of not being able to pick where you go, you may not be able to pick en route or terminal.
Yeah.
So if you don't like working the center environment and they tell you, hey, here's your center class date, you may not be able to say no. And if you do say no, that may be the last time you ever get, hired or accepted by the FAA.
Just a little bit of pressure, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's all based on complexity and volume. There's different levels. I want to say the lowest is a 5 and the highest is a 12. So based on that and also kind of where you go, cost of living, there's some locality percentage that's factored into that. Determines your pay. I have a friend at the center right now, and basically every time he learns kind of one of the different positions, he gets a pay bump. So, obviously you start out, we'll say, we'll start, in a terminal environment. You learn, ground control, and then you learn clearance delivery, and then you learn, tower or local. And every time you learn one of those positions, you get a pay hike.
Oh, cool. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess one question about that is, and obviously you're not in that kind of process, you might not know that, but say you get to a center, but you really want to work a tower. Are you able to switch? Is it easy to switch? Do you know? Or is it one thing like, all right, you're put in the center, this is where you're going to be forever?
So you are able to switch, but it's not very easy. So like, for example, I have friends at Washington Center that want to go to a terminal environment. They love the terminal environment, but they're dealing with the center because, that's what they got. So basically you'd have to find another facility that has openings.
Yeah.
And then they would have to basically accept you to move.
Okay.
And once you do move, that training process starts all over again.
Oh, no.
You go back to the academy, you learn the terminal environment, go through terminal school.
Oh, wow.
Then you go back to the facility, train at that facility, learn clearance delivery, ground, local, flight data, whatever, until you're fully certified CPC, certified professional controller. And then only after that are you making your full pay grade at that specific facility.
Wow. So it's kind of it's not necessarily beneficial unless you really, really hate what you're doing.
Well, not necessarily hate what you're doing, yes, but sometimes the area that you live in, like the DC area is very expensive. Maybe you want to change a pace. You'd like to live out west or something like that.
Yeah.
You like what you do in the terminal environment, but you're just tired of the city, or,
right?
Tired of the crazy traffic. Or
oh my gosh, yeah.
So, it's just like I looked at that. And it was just like, well, by the time I, do all of this, go to a facility that I actually like working to, it's like, where's the time to have a life, to meet somebody, to start a family? It's like, I'm going to be like 50 by the time
I know.
By the time I get out to a facility that I actually like, it's like, I'm tired of moving. I've already moved 3 times in the past 2 years. It's like, I'm done.
Welcome to the glorious life of an aviation person.
Exactly.
For lack of a better word.
Yeah.
So you made the choice to not go FAA, and you left Delta Private Jets for Dulles. And what was the training process for the ramp? What was all that about?
The training process was pretty intense.
Mm-hmm.
It took me about 5 months. And it's similar to kind of other facilities training, FAA facilities. There's book work and you got to memorize a lot of stuff, know your airport inside out, upside down, and backwards. And, it's a lot of on the job. You're plugged in and you got a trainer tethered to you that's also plugged in. And, if you make a mistake, he's right there to key up, that second to fix it.
Yeah.
So it's pretty intense, similar to kind of like what we were talking about. There's several different positions in our facility, and you have to learn each of the different positions. Okay. So there's 4 positions in our facility. So took me about 2 months from my first position, basically not having much experience other than college in our simulators. But then from there, it kind of kicked off.
What's the differences in the positions? Like, is the first one you're kind of released for duty, but you're still being monitored, or is it more you have different jobs and you have different responsibilities?
So some of them are different jobs and responsibilities. Others are the same responsibilities, but just a different part of the airport.
Okay.
So the airport's divided up into basically 3 ramp control positions.
Okay.
There's a north side, there's kind of a middle area, and then there's a south area ramp, I think is what the chart actually says, even though we're called ramp control. So obviously, one person will take the north side, another person will take kind of that middle chunk, and another person will take that southern chunk of the airport. And on occasion, when it's busy, we actually have a smaller second tower that's staffed with a person to work that southern portion of the airport.
Okay.
The 4th position, which is very unique, especially to our airport, is what's called the mobile lounge dispatch position. So one unique thing at Dulles Airport is we do have the people movers, the mobile lounges, yes. Moon rovers, whatever you want to call it. They look very, very odd, but they play an extremely vital role to the airport.
Yeah, they do.
So with that position, we're basically taking data from the airlines, passenger counts, and we're dispatching appropriate mobile lounges out to different parts of the airport to pick up those international customers to take them to the customs building.
Okay. Are those rovers, are they still operated by an actual human? Because I've been told, I don't know how true this is, that a lot of them can be operated remotely. Is that true?
That is not true.
Yeah, I don't know who told me that.
That's so funny to hear that, though.
Yeah.
Kind of like the last podcast I did. Some people, they call them mobile cafes, and that was ages ago, back in the 60s when they first started. But no, they are operated by an individual person, and we talk to them specifically. So, for example, there's a certain route that we send the lounges on, and they have to cross the active taxi lane in order to get to the spot on the airport to pick up customers.
Yeah.
And they're all named after states. Oh, wow. So you're getting a call, you're taxiing airplanes, and all of a sudden you get a call, Lounge, Florida, East Road to X-Ray, and I know that they're trying to get across, and, I'm evaluating, time and distance between other airplanes and, the feasibility of it. And I'm clearing them directly across and working them into my traffic.
Have you ever had a rogue lounge, one that just didn't want to listen to you and just did whatever you wanted to do?
I haven't had a rogue lounge. Yeah, we've had lounges. I mean, people make mistakes.
Yeah.
We've had stuff like that happen. Nothing really serious.
That's
nothing
good.
At least since I've been there.
Every once in a while, you're like, Lounge, Florida, where are you going there, buddy?
Exactly.
What's your plan? You see that 747? You might want to go the other way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but they continuously monitor our frequencies.
That's good.
So they're just like, we work them just like an airplane.
Yeah,
we really do.
It's funny because I've landed at Dulles before, and I don't know if we talked about this before we started the podcast, but we'll land all the way in the east side and then take off. We got to go to runway 30, and it can be a little bit of a taxi, and we got to cut through ramp. And when you're kind of going through, sometimes it just looks like it's like a free for all. Like you got the luggage carts, you got this, you got that, you got this. And it's just like, it's like, what is going on? And it almost feels like they're playing chicken with you. Like they're trying to race you to it. But it's nice to know that it's all kind of controlled and operated by someone.
Yeah. It's nerve wracking, man. I mean, there's several times where I've had tugs that, weren't looking, and they got a little too close where, I had to call, my airport operations team to be like, hey, this dude just cut off an airplane and he had to slam on his brakes because of it.
Yeah. So, he almost got hit by an airplane, which would not have ended well for him.
Yeah. So it is nerve wracking, and depending on the time of the day, it can be pretty crazy.
Yeah, so, Dulles gets busy, and especially if you add some weather into the mix, and I'm sure that can block people up, and you got people waiting for gates, and it could just be a hot mess.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of stories, do you have any good stories about like a specific day where the weather was just crapped out, or maybe like a certain airline came in and really screwed everything up for you?
I have a couple stories. I'll try. There's one story in particular, not really weather related, but something happened in the terminal that was bad enough that someone had to get life flighted out.
Oh, yikes.
Well, obviously, I'm only working fixed wing. I don't really talk to helicopters. They kind of they don't really need a runway. They just take off, and it's like landing at your own risk, or whatever the tower controller's saying, local controller.
Yeah, they do their own thing.
But yeah, and so they had to send a life flight helicopter in. Well, it creates an interesting dynamic because this helicopter is now landing on my ramp in the middle of the taxiway. And it just so happened to be near one of our mobile lounge docks, where the mobile lounge shuttles kind of take people across the airport.
Yeah.
So coordinating that was really interesting, and just kind of seeing a helicopter land, kind of come over the top of the tower and then just land down in the middle of the taxiway is kind of bizarre.
Yeah. I would like to be a fly on the wall on that. All of a sudden tower calls you like, hey, we got a helicopter landing your ramp. You're like, wait, okay, cool. And then you're like, wait, what? A helicopter landing my ramp? And you like look through all these notebooks trying to find a procedure. It's like, we don't have a procedure for a helicopter landing on the ramp.
Exactly.
What do we do?
So it's just like, hey man, your control, you just let me know when he needs to take off again, and I'll make sure stuff's out of the way.
That's funny. Exactly. We'll get this 380 out of the way, 747. It's like, whatever, man, we got it.
Yeah.
What are some, I don't know the worst, but like, what is the most complicated kind of issue that you can run into? Like traffic jams, log jams, like what is a way for a ramp to get clogged up pretty fast?
The worst way, which is soon fast approaching, is the de-ice season.
Hey-o. So don't bring up those words. Come on, man.
I know. I won't say the S word.
Please don't.
But our other ramp tower, our smaller tower on the south side, United's express ice pad is connected to our taxiway. Okay. Or I should say taxi lane. So we actually have to funnel all the flights, mainline and express, through that south area because they've decided that that's the easiest way to kind of funnel everything. Basically, that big hold block in 30, runway 30, the giant concrete area, that turns into a mainline de-ice pad.
Okay.
So everything that's on the midfield goes out the east side and takes that nice long taxi route that you guys have to do when you have to go to 30.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Well, there's one controller that is coordinating and talking to all of those airplanes.
Oh, geez.
So on occasion, I'll have upwards of 25 airplanes all on my frequency all at the same time. And to top it off, we don't have flight strips.
Oh, wow.
I'm literally using a clipboard and a paper form, and that's how I'm tracking everything with my own symbology and a pen and paper.
I was going to ask two questions. I was going to ask where, like you said, you're in a tower. Are you guys connected to the main tower? Do you have your own tower? And then I was also going to ask, what kind of equipment do you guys have? And you kind of answered that a little bit, but I just imagine you guys had some like on ground radar with a big screen where you can track everyone and you can like physically see what's going on. Or is it actually where you like, it is actually you looking out a window, making sure that the Emirates 380 pays attention and the exec jet or Delta private jets doesn't do anything stupid?
Oh yeah. It's us looking out the window. Mind you, we do have some technology that helps, but it's non-controlling. Oh, wow. It's just more of situational awareness. So it helps, but it's not something that I can physically use to control an airplane. Okay. It's not a approved system per se. Or in the process of getting a new system.
Nice.
But in the meantime, it's all pen and paper. So when you guys call and you're like, hey, ExecJet 123, we're short of alpha. It's like, okay, are you short of alpha on Juliet? Short of alpha on Zulu? Because, different parts of those buildings over there, Signature's buildings from my angle, sometimes depending on the aircraft, like especially if it's like a Phenom or an Eclipse jet, you guys hide right underneath that building. I can't even see you looking out the window. So, if you guys just say short of alpha, it's like, well, you're on the east side or you're on the west side? And I need to confirm that.
Yeah.
So
that's
it's a very interesting dynamic. The tower itself. So one of the towers is located on the Alpha Bravo concourse. Mm-hmm. The other tower is located on the Charlie Delta concourse. You have the old FAA tower at the main terminal, and then you have the FAA tower all the way out kind of south of the south ramp. So there's 4 towers all across the terminals, and we're kind of the one that's in the middle area.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So every time I fly and we land on, what is it, one right, I think, and there's a tower connected to like a museum. Is that a real tower or is that just part of the museum?
So that is the Udvar Hazy Museum, and that's a tower that's just for the museum. You can actually go up inside of it. You should, if you have some time, there's a free shuttle from the main terminal that'll take you to the museum. So, but yeah, it's just a glass tower, and they have kind of like a little air traffic exhibit in there.
Yeah, so that's cool. Do you ever get to work the secret airlines that are out of there that have like the huge unmarked airplanes out there? Are they? Do you get to work those quite often?
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Oh, well, every time we taxi, there's I gotcha.
yeah. I'm not sure what you're talking about.
That's hilarious. Yeah. Every time I taxi by those, I'm like, what is going on? There's so many planes.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah. I don't know what I'm talking about either.
Yeah. So no, I mean, we do get to work, like the 380 and stuff like that. We've had military airplanes come in, like, some F-18s and stuff like that. We had, I think they were F-18s. We had like a flight of 4 that came in the one day. Of course, 5:00 departure bank, busiest time of the day.
Yeah.
And
why not?
The tower calls over on our shout line. Hey, do you guys have UHF capability? And I'm just sitting there like laughing, like, yeah, we sure. We got UHF. It's like, we don't have UHF capability. Well, that poses a problem because they do not have VHF capabilities. So I literally have to give them control of my taxi lane and make sure it's clear all the way across so that they can take these military guys across because they can't communicate on VHF and we're all VHF.
Yeah, that's gotta love the military, right?
Yeah,
that's funny.
So it happens on occasion. We just had the Red Arrows. We had 3 of them come into the museum, so that was kind of cool.
Yeah, that was cool.
I didn't get to talk to them, but it was kind of neat seeing them come in and land. They did a flyover at the Nationals game, the baseball game over DC, so that was kind of cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
We go there quite a bit. We always we love landing on one right and or 19 left and just going to Signature, and then the next time we leave, we wait for the long taxi to 30, but it feels like it works really well. And obviously it's a well thought out system. And it's crazy to know that you guys use pen and paper and you don't have strips, you don't have anything, and you're probably up there with binoculars or just look and see. So that's crazy to know. And
exactly.
I mean, it's good to know because obviously pilots can be very irrational sometimes and they don't like to wait and they think they're the most important all the time. So it's really, I mean, seriously though, it's like good to know that like
it is.
There's a reason sometimes there's a delay, or to know that like, hey, they're still working in like the 1970s. All right. They still got a clipboard. So give them a couple minutes and stuff like that. So it's good to know because I mean, I don't really remember anything at Dulles per se, but at some airports where it might be radar controlled everywhere, or you're talking to ground or something like that. Give them some time because they got a lot of traffic to deal with. Yeah.
And we do our best. I mean, if there's a delay or if there's something like that where they're going to have to sit, I make it very conversational. Obviously there's a point where you're serious and you're giving the clear cut, word by word instructions.
Yeah.
But then there's times where it's like, hey, you got to hold short of Alpha 4. It's going to be a few minutes. I've got, this airplane that's got to push up into the taxiway because of the construction project. So just give me a few minutes. I'll keep you moving. And when you make it really conversational like that, I think a lot of pilots appreciate it and they kind of get the picture. They know what's going on, because from your angle, it's probably pretty hard to see, how many airplanes am I working on the ramp surface, if it's, busy.
Oh yeah.
And also kind of which direction, that's kind of the other complexity is when we get into the busy banks, we're sending guys out both sides of the ramp, east and west. So, one guy might push east, the second guy might push west, another guy might push east. So it's like a big Tetris problem.
Yeah, we don't see the big picture.
Yeah. So, you're funneling guys up and down over the crossovers. And so, I try and keep it conversational and professional to let everybody know, like, hey, this is what's going on. Like, this is the picture that I'm seeing. Like, it's just going to be a minute.
Yeah, no, that's good. And that's helpful because, obviously there's times where you probably can't do that. And when you're really busy and it's harder to do, but pilots are selfish. We just worry about what we're doing. By the time we're waiting on ramp, we want to hurry up and take off so we can sit down and eat our crew food and sit down for 4 hours. So, we're selfish for no reason, but it's just a pilot thing. So, it's just, I'm sure you are well aware of all the different pilot personalities by working where you do. So, that it's some people are better than others.
Oh yeah. Exactly. And that's kind of a good reason why I got my pilot certificate is to, even though I'm barking out orders, I have a rough understanding of what you guys are feeling like on the other side of that radio transmission. Have
you recognized any voices of like repeat offenders of like, can you recognize a voice, be like, oh, this guy's going to be a problem? Or is it?
Yes. Oh, yes.
That's hilarious.
Trust me. There's regulars that come to the airport. Some of the airlines, there's regulars, and I know their voice as soon as they key up. It's like, so on occasion when I work the South Tower, you're pretty much over there for a majority of the day, and it's just you. You get some breaks in between, but you're pretty much over there just by yourself the whole day.
Yeah.
So, you work the first inbound and then the second inbound's coming and you hear the same voice. And I always, try and have a little bit of humor. It's like, hey, welcome back. So, and I'm sure they know me, oh, great. It's that controller again, so
both of you guys are rolling your eyes like, great, here we go again.
Exactly.
That's funny. Well, cool, man. It's really interesting to hear your side of the ramp side and the aviation side and hear a different facet of how kind of aviation works and how everything at airports ties in together. And for me personally, I didn't know that there was a difference between FAA controllers and ramp controllers. So it was interesting to hear that and hear a little bit more. I have a rapid fire section for you too, and then we can wrap up. But it's just been great to have you on and hear more about that. I think that it's useful, and if someone, because flying is not for everyone, right? Like flying's great. Flying's a great career path. It is the most complex and very, very strange career to get into. So there's a lot of reasons for someone not to want to do it. And sometimes you realize you don't want to do it when you're an airline pilot. Like just because you become an airline pilot doesn't mean you're going to love it. I've talked to someone he actually works Washington Center, and he was a regional airline pilot and he left to go work for Center. So, things happen and you can go to different jobs. So it's great to know the options that you have and that there are other opportunities to keep you in aviation and around airplanes. So it's been great having you on.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. And so let's go ahead and get into the rapid fire section. And you've listened to the podcast before, so you're aware of the questions. And I literally do not have anything written down, so it's whatever comes to my mind. So it might be like 30 questions. It might be 5. So let's go ahead and see.
All right, man.
All right, cool. All right, what is your favorite airline?
Delta.
What's your least favorite airline?
I'd have to say, I haven't flown a bunch, but United.
Do you have an airline that you maybe like a least favorite airline to work with, like one that consistently messes up more than others, or one where you like roll your eyes a little bit more than others?
I'm not going to comment on that.
Perfect.
I want to keep my job.
All right, there you go. I like it. All right, what is your favorite airplane to work? Or to see, to look at, whatever.
I love the Antonov AN-124.
Cool. There you go.
Yeah,
Would that be your favorite airplane in general too?
No, 757-300, the Flying Pencil.
The Flying Pencil. It is very much a pencil and very powerful.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you have a least favorite airplane to work? Probably anything that's slow.
I probably just the least favorite to work is probably I would say the 380.
Okay.
Because it creates a lot of complexities on the ramp.
Yeah. It takes up a lot of space too.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is your favorite airline livery?
Oh man, that's a tough one. Right now, I'd have to say, I'd have to say Iceland Air.
Okay.
They have a livery called Hekla, and it's like the Aurora lights painted on a 757.
Oh, that's cool.
It looks awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I like that. All right, you are commuting, you're flying for vacation, you're commuting, you're at an airport, you need to get some food. What's your go-to food to get?
Chinese for sure.
You're the third person to say that. The last person I interviewed said Chinese. I don't think I've ever had Chinese food at an airport before.
Detroit specifically, man. There's what the heck is it called? P.F. Chang's by that fountain. Yeah. You know the fountain? With,
I know what you're talking about.
There's a P.F. Chang's there, and when I used to non-rev with Delta, I'd go there all the time.
All right, fair enough. P.F. Chang's is respectable. I just imagine someone going to like some like hole in the wall airport food sushi place or something like that. I'm like, oh, that does not sound like a great idea.
No.
All right, when you are personally flying, would you rather fly long legs or short legs?
Short legs.
Do you like mountain airports, beach airports, or kind of flatlands?
Mountain.
Would you rather fly sunset or sunrise?
Sunset.
Would you rather, obviously you probably work pretty long shifts, and would you rather work the graveyard, the morning, or the afternoon?
Definitely the afternoon. It's a lot busier and it's a lot faster pace.
Okay. Let's see. When you're flying, what is one thing you always have to have on your person while you're flying?
My camera. I do a lot of photography on the side.
Okay. If you could do it all over again, would you change anything about your kind of the path that you've taken, or are you pretty happy with how it worked out?
No, I'm very happy with how it worked out. You know, there's no one size fits all, and I'm really happy for where I am right now.
Good. If there is anyone in the aviation industry, maybe you can do like a present day person in aviation. Is there anyone that you would like to meet most?
I would love to meet Steve-O One Knievo.
Okay.
I would love to meet him. He seems like a really cool person. What
about maybe like the past generation, maybe someone that kind of, I don't know, like a Charles Lindbergh or something like that? Is there anyone in the past that you would like to meet? Orville and Wilbur Wright or anyone like that?
Can I say Bob Hoover?
You can.
Is that acceptable?
Yeah,
Bob
that's
Hoover,
definitely
man.
acceptable.
Yeah, I wish I could have met him. He seems like a pretty cool dude.
Or watch him do some of his stuff. It's like, dang, dude.
Yeah.
How did you do a dual engine flame out and go land and taxi and park without ever touching the brakes and stop perfectly? It's like, what the heck?
and do a barrel roll while pouring a glass of water.
Yeah. Without spilling. Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
Without spilling.
Yeah. All right, cool, man. Those are all the ones I have for you right now. I can't think of anything else. So I appreciate you coming on the podcast. It was a great time talking to you. And I kind of said a little bit earlier, it's really cool to hear every single different path that you can go down. So I think this will be received really well. And I look forward to releasing it. Yeah,
I'm really excited, man. I'm excited to see what people think about it. And hopefully it some of the pilots listening, we'll kind of get a better idea of what we do. And, it's kind of a very different part of the industry that I didn't know about until very recently when I, got hired on. And I don't think very many people really know about it.
No, definitely not. I didn't know about it. So yeah, I don't think many people knew about it either.
Yeah. So, well, I appreciate it, man.
No problem. I hope you have a great day, and I'll keep you updated on when this comes out. And that is a wrap of episode number 78. Aviation, thank you again for listening. Like I said earlier, got some new designs coming out, so stay tuned for that. And if you have any suggestions or if you are great at drawing airplanes, hit me up. We could always collaborate and work together. As always, if you know anyone that should be on the podcast, send me an email, pilotthepilothq@gmail.com. I am historically terrible at email. It is one thing that I'm trying to work on. I'm trying to reply as soon as I get them. Flying and podcasting and emails just do not go well together for me. I can only do one thing. I'm a typical guy. I can't multitask. I can't do so much at one time. So I'm trying to work better. You send me an email. I want to respond to it. So send me an email if you think you're right for the podcast or if you know someone that's right for the podcast. Aviation, thank you guys. Have a great day and happy flying.